This
Where are we?
conference will now be recorded.
So, brief bit about the Permanent Way Institution, but you're all members. So it's interesting, in the 1880s, and it was a body not just for engineers, but for supervisors and operatives. So as it was when I started in the 1970s. So, and I think we're hoping to continue that principle through, but we are now, we do have this professional registration stream, which is good for the engineers and managers, of course. So our key issues, we work, our key point is we work with the rail industry, and particularly this enhancing knowledge and skills, and particularly in terms of demonstration of competence through our professional registration. For those who are not aware, there's lots of sections around the UK, and actually very active now on the whether you call them webinars or presentations online, and there's a lot of these are now recorded online as well via YouTube. So no excuse not to top up your CPD, as I'll talk about later. There's a journal, of course, and the seminars, which we're looking at how we can start sort of web-based seminars. Hopefully, if we're still locked down-ish with large numbers, we're looking to have one with the London section in October. And of course, there's books, and we're here to talk about professional registration. And I can't get my this to work. Why is that? I do apologise. There. So, professional registration. It's this competence and commitment. It's assessed, and it's an independent assessment, really, that the UK Engineering Council have their UK spec, that professional bodies, professional engineering institutions, PEIs are sometimes referred to, have to follow a UK spec. So the PWI has processes that are approved by the UK Engineering Council, and it's been recognised in the industry, rail industry, more so, particularly through some RAIB incident accident reports, the ORR, who support findings and recommendations that there needs to be better evidence of demonstrating competence in the rail industry. So there's three main steps here. So there's EngTech, we're going to concentrate today, that then you can progress from EngTech to incorporated engineer and chartered engineer, and you can also have what's called dual membership. So for example, I'm also a member and fellow of the Institution of Civil Engineers, as well as being a chartered engineer and fellow with Permanent Way Institution. So you can have dual membership of a number of institutions. And people often say, well, why would I want to belong to more than one? Well, you know, call yourself a railway engineer. Why wouldn't you want to belong to the institution for professional infrastructure rail engineers? And also, why wouldn't you call yourself a civil engineer? Like I call myself a railway civil engineer. Why wouldn't I want to belong to the Institution of Civil Engineers? Yes, there's fees associated with both and others, but I've never found that's held me back. In fact, it hasn't. Having a greater number of affiliations has helped me throughout my career, and I will promote that for others. So the other thing about the professional registration with the PWI, that it's open to everybody, so you don't have to have any qualifications. Of course, it's more of a challenge with limited qualifications, but it's open to everybody who can demonstrate competence and commitment. So benefits, it demonstrates this commitment, in particular on engineering and safety, which is valued by employers and clients, and the regulatory body, as I've touched on. You can also get international recognition. It's a UK professional qualification. UK professional qualifications are valued internationally. Of course, you get letters after your name. Can't guarantee the next one, of course, but it does give the opportunity for higher earning potential and promotional prospects. I can say that myself from experience. And of course, you join the framework and access the team within the PWI of colleagues of rail infrastructure, professional rail infrastructure engineers. So the first steps is that everybody is going through this route with the PWI must be a member of the PWI. So if you're going to encourage others, please make sure that they also apply to be PWI members. Then for going to IngEng and CEng, you get your qualifications can be assessed by the PWI academic panel if they are deviant from traditional academic route. So we have that capability with the PWI, with our academic panel, to review anyone's bespoke package of qualifications. But for EngTech, you don't necessarily need to have any qualifications. So, but what you do need, you must have a supporter. So a supporter is someone who knows you well and works with you, because there's 3 statements on the application form that only a supporter or a work colleague or manager can say. So along the lines of works professionally, works well, has good attitude, that sort of thing. But you also need a sponsor, so someone who's already registered with the Engineering Council at the level you want to be at. Although there are cases where we would accept one person as the sponsor and the supporter, I personally would strongly encourage that you have 2 separate people. So a supporter who works with you and knows you well, and a sponsor who's registered with the Engineering Council. Now, they don't really need to be PWI members, but ideally they should be PWI members. Okay, at least one as an absolute minimum. Okay, so for example, if you're really stuck for a sponsor, I could be a sponsor, or one of our other members who might support you through your process, because, for example, I am a fellow and chartered engineer with the PWI, so I'm a CEng PWI, so I can sponsor anyone at any level. But I can't sign off as a supporter because I don't know you well enough. So you need to complete the application form. And for EngTech, it is just an application form, noted though with supporting evidence, but not too much evidence. Okay, and I'll come to that a bit later. But you also, everyone for every level must demonstrate you've got a personal development plan and that you've got a record of continuing professional development. So you need that at all levels, and you need that right now. You should have that, and I'll come to that a bit later. So, as I said, 2 people: supporter, someone who knows you well, ideally a line manager, and a sponsor. As I say, doesn't have to be a member of the PWI, but must be listed with the Engineering Council. Okay, and I've touched on that. Now, the whole process is set down on the PWI website, and you can access that. It gives you guidance, you can access the forms, you can access examples of previous applications for helping you with your application. But you should be working with your sponsor on putting together your application. Notice I said with your sponsor, and it's good practice if your sponsor and your supporter review your submission. Sorry, go back to if your sponsor needs a bit of advice, what they should be assisting you with, then don't hesitate to encourage them to get in touch with Liz or myself as well. So as it says there, EngTech then, and IngEng and CEng as well, but engage with your sponsor. Okay, so you need to work with the sponsor on that. And complete the application form in full and read what the form says, and we're going to go into that. If we've got specific questions about the form later, I've got that open, so we can talk about that later. But what I'm going to sort of coach you on here is referring to the principles on the form. And so it says answer the questions or give the evidence that it asks for, and so that you demonstrate these competencies and provide supporting evidence, as I say, appropriate evidence, not more than 12 A4 sheets and a few A3 drawings there. Please don't exceed that. So, for example, if you want to demonstrate communication that you've contributed or led a meeting, you don't attach the whole meeting minutes, but you might attach the front sheet of the minutes demonstrating that you were in attendance, or you were in the chair, or you were taking the minutes, for example. Equally, if you've done a big report, incident investigation report, for example, that though you don't need to submit the whole report, you might just submit the front page demonstrating you've done it, and maybe the content sheet, ideally with your name somewhere on those sheets. So that's an example of appendices that one might submit with the application. So and equally, another one might be a risk assessment. So one part of the risk assessment, not the full sheet, but something that you've done with your name on, ideally. Right. So you also have to have this your personal development plan up to date. So current professional development plan, and for EngTech a minimum of 1 year's CPD. But personally, and maybe I might get ticked off for this, but personally, if you've been in the industry for more than 1 year, I'd like to see at least 2 years. But the minimum required for EngTech is 1 year's record of CPD. Okay, so you submit that to the PWI, through Liz, in fact, and within 6 weeks you should get a response. So that's reviewed by PWI reviewers, and the outcome should be that you're accepted and to be registered with the Engineering Council, or you'll be asked to resubmit. So one benefits with the PWI is that we have a scrutineer role where we ask the reviewers to look at your submission. We give you the opportunity to come back with improvements if that's what the reviewer recommends, which gives you a better chance of passing the formal review by 2 reviewers. But if it's marginal in the view of the reviewers, you may be invited to attend an interview for EngTech. So it's we've had a couple of interviews that we've had to have, but it's not a common occurrence. So provided you can fill in the form correctly and provide the evidence with the support of your sponsor and supporter, it should be okay. Right, so now I'm going to go into some detail of what you need to fill in. Apart from a CV, you might want to make one of your appendices. If you've got more than 4 or 5 years in the industry, a more detailed CV could be useful as part of your appendix sheets. On the application form, you've got one side of A4 where you put in your summary, and only a summary of your experience to date, not a job description telling you what you should be doing, but what you have done is your CV, and put it on the one page. If you've got 20 plus years experience, you'll squeeze 20 years into that one sheet of A4, but you can attach as an appendix a more detailed CV. So make sure you do that on the application form. Then there are a number of specific questions or examples you need to provide under sections A, B, C, D, and E. So on A1 and A2, you need, and it basically describe an element of your work that you did. And it might be a bit that went well, and it might be a bit that didn't go well, but describe an element of work that you did, so, and what you did. So this is to demonstrate your knowledge. So I might talk about, for example, how I designed and did the drawing work for siding I installed, perhaps at White City Depot in the 1870s, no, the 1990s or something. So I might say, oh, that's what I did. I did that design. I did it in accordance with those standards, and I checked the curvature, etc. So you say what you did, but you haven't got that many words, so you don't need to go too much detail, but demonstrate that you have done some technical, permanent way or permanent way related work, and you demonstrate you know your stuff. In this case, design of alignment, or it might have been designing some drainage, or it might have been installing some drainage, or something like that. So it has to be something that you did. So that's item 1, A1. A2, you then have to describe a railway infrastructure system or some equipment. So that might be one example that covers both, that's acceptable. So you might describe some work you did. So you might design drainage job that you designed or something, and in that description you might describe how the drainage works. So you have catch pits, and you have slotted drains, and they have falls, and they might go to an outfall, and you might then say you designed that, and you supervise the installation or something. You might put it all in one, but you must describe something you did and describe a system. So I refer to the fact I might talk about a siding I designed, but I might also then go on to talk about describing what tamping is, or I might go on and describe what stressing is in terms of describing a system. Or you might, if you're more familiar with surveying, you might describe surveying equipment and good practice surveying. We have had some surveyors apply and describe their system, but it has to be something to demonstrate your knowledge. So I hope that's clear. B is about demonstrating that you've done what you've done. To demonstrate contribution to design, construction, operation, maintenance, etc. And it could be about maintenance, of course, is important. So it doesn't have to be about construction. So if you're on a maintenance field, it's what you've done in terms of maintenance systems. So here, it's quite clear. The first one is give an example where you use measurement, monitoring, assessment. So it might be that you're talking about condition of bridge timbers. So for example, so you went out, you inspected the bridge timbers, you assessed the condition of the timbers, you recorded that, etc. That might be an example. It might be an example where you went out and did some track surveying to determine the condition of the components. You might have done some S&C inspections, or you might just have been doing some monitoring. So you might have been monitoring structure slopes or clearances somewhere in terms of movement or something, or track movement. So you say, so I went out, I did this, I used that, and I recorded it here. But it's quite clear. Give an example where you've used measurement, monitoring. So what I would call process monitoring and maybe people monitoring is not really what we're looking for here. It's technical measurement, monitoring, assessment. So not in terms of monitoring the performance of the delivery of a team or some project management issue. It's engineering. That's what we're looking for, an example of. And I did this, I went out, I monitored, I measured, I checked, and that. So that's what you need to say. Then the next one is give examples where you've made decisions, and it's about use of materials, resources, equipment. So you say, so I looked at the options for this job. I decided to use timber sleepers, or I decided to use steel sleepers, and I decided that, and the reason for that was because it was lighter to move steel sleepers with the resources, or it was and then you've got to discuss perhaps why you made that decision over concrete sleepers or timber sleepers. But again, you haven't got a lot words put in, but just set down where you have looked at options where you have made a decision regarding use. And it may be in some cases that you are part of a team doing this measurement, doing this materials decision and resourcing, planning or whatever. So you need to emphasize your role, but you can't avoid the fact that you're part of a team making that decision. But try not to put we, try and say, I did this, I contributed by, okay, like that. So then the next thing under C, I think there's 3 or 4 sub-items under this, but overall you've got to describe something that you identified and agreed had to be done. So again, it might be related to, it can be the same example. So you might have done some measurement and monitoring of track condition. Then from that, you might determine, well, do you know what, this needs to be re-railed, or we need to send in a tamper or something. So you describe something that you agree had to be done, and it's quite clear. It says refer to relevant codes and standards. So you went out, you checked something on the site, you determined it wasn't in accordance with XYZ standard, and so you determined that this had to be reinstated or whatever. But it's quite clear that you need to say what you found and what were the issues in terms of codes and standards. So that's quite clear there. Excuse me. Right, then the next thing is demonstrate where you've accepted responsibility for work. and you've worked effectively without supervision, and you've accepted responsibility maybe for others as well. So handback acceptance of some works, if you're the handover and acceptance engineer, is a cracking example. But some people with limited experience, and we can, as I say, we accept people going for EngTech with less than 2 years experience, may not have quite the level of responsibility that some people might be looking for. So you need to just think where you've worked with others, where you've accepted responsibility. If you've produced a drawing and you've accepted responsibility for completing that drawing and offering that up, if you've checked a drawing, you've had the responsibility of checking that drawing. But obviously the greater responsibility, the better in terms of what you put down here. So a cracking example, I was the engineer who checked the work prior to handback. I checked all the other disciplines had done their bit. I received all the handbacks from the signals from the other guys. So that's a really good example. But we acknowledge that might not be practical for someone with limited time in the industry. But with your sponsor and supporter, look for where you've had a key role in accepting responsibility for delivery of work and accepting assets into service is cracking example. Doing an inspection of assets, you might do these wheel timber, long timber inspections, so you must have completed your inspection and accepted that those components or elements remain in service. So then on section D, you now need to provide evidence of where you use effective communication. So I touched on where you might have a set of minutes or some reports you've done. You might have been part of a team working with neighbours in terms of impact on of nighttime works or weekend works with the community. If you've had a role there, try and get some notes, and that's a good example to put in. I contributed to, or I led, and if you could say you actually were given that responsibility, that's another responsibility thing you might have been given. If you were leading the discussions with stakeholders, coordinating systems engineers, if you can demonstrate where you had such a key role in minutes or forms or a report. In fact, period reporting is quite a good example where you submitted period reports. Okay. Then another thing it says here, one of these, I think there's 3 subsections to D, but it's quite clearly one of them you need to demonstrate where you've worked effectively with the others. So you need to give an example. So it can be one of others where you've worked with others. So you're part of a team, you might have directed others. Great if you could say you've worked with more junior staff. So some people have apprentices come through their offices. It's great if you can refer to how you mentored apprentices or visitors, maybe, anything like that. But another key here is reference to diversity and equality. So really good if you can give an example where you've worked diversely and equality. A really good example not so long ago when I was doing my professional interviews for one of the bodies I would help, where they gave an example of planning works on site, and they planned the breaks on site to reflect one of the operatives who was a Muslim, so that they all had a break at the same time that the Muslim needed to have his breaks associated with his prayer time. And I thought that was a really good example. And welfare planning for different genders and people's needs is another really good example where you say you planned welfare or whatever to take out of everyone's needs. I think that's a good statement. I had another interview, someone said I took account of everyone's needs. So don't ignore it, make reference to it. If you can't actually think of an example, at the minimum is make reference to the fact that you acknowledge the need for management of diversity and equality. To ignore it is a no-no. Okay, and then on to E, which has got 5 sections to it. Again, it's straightforward. Demonstrate how you comply with the PWI Code of Conduct, which is very similar to all engineering council professional body code of conduct. So again, don't ignore it. You need to, the least you've got to do now is go and have a look at the PWI Code of Conduct, which is embedded in this presentation at the end. So you need to know what that is, but it's about doing the right thing. It's about being professional. It's about looking after today and tomorrow, future generations, both in safety and sustainable development, which is covered by the next 2 points. So you need to just acknowledge that you know the PWI Code of Conduct, and ideally put in a bit more to demonstrate how you know how you work professionally in accordance with PWI Code of Conduct. So that's E1. E2 is about safety. E3 is about sustainable development. So you're going to have plenty of opportunity to expand on safety and sustainable development. So you might want to tuck in another nugget around the Code of Conduct under E1. So understanding competence and your level of competence is perhaps an indicator I would give you. Demonstrate there that you know that part of your code of conduct is understanding your level of competence and the competence of others. So it's not doing a job when you know you're not competent to do it, and it's seeking to get training on something if you're asked to do something. So that's just an example. So then I'm going on to E2. Now I can't stress now for E2 it's about demonstrating how you work safely and of all the way of scoring the applications, this is the one that requires the highest score. So you need to demonstrate a passion for managing safely, and that is it shouldn't be anything new to you in the rail industry. That's why we score it highly, because it is a requirement within the rail industry that we treat safety as a priority. So you need to demonstrate how you work safely. So demonstrate you've done safe methods statements. You could establish safe methods of work and how you've worked within safe methods of work, how you've done risk assessments. At this level, you don't need to demonstrate that you shouldn't get quizzed on your knowledge of risk assessments. But as you move to IEng and CEng, you will definitely be asked to demonstrate your absolute understanding of risk assessments, safe working methods, but you will need to demonstrate how you prioritize safety over other considerations. So you need to find 1 or 2 examples of how you prioritize safety. And when you think about it, we do it all the time in the industry, so it shouldn't be that difficult. But I'll give you an example. You may be responsible for the handback, as I said. You might have had that as an example earlier, but there might be an example where you've had to delay that handback to late opening for traffic, maybe even if it's only 5 minutes, but where you made that decision on safety grounds. And that's a cracking example of where you've done that. You might have also had to blow the whistle on someone who might be working in an unsafe manner. So you might have been you think, hang on, I need someone to a drugs and alcohol test from someone here, or hang on, they've not got the right PPE and you've had to blow the whistle. You might, if you're in a more senior role, you might have had to invite someone to leave the work site. So they are cracking examples of where you might have prioritized safety. And as you move up to IEng and CEng, you will be looking for more and more evidence of safety leadership, especially at CEng, safety leadership. And I can't emphasize enough how you need to demonstrate your passion for safety. Okay, so on to sustainable development. And often this is totally forgotten. It's something that I think we've all done in our sleep. So from when I started in the 70s, but now we need to demonstrate that your work and you understand sustainable development, and you give an example of sustainable working. So reuse of materials is a classic use of sustainable working. You've probably done that where you've taken old rails and used them elsewhere, or ballast cleaning, recycling ballast is an example. So reuse of materials is a good example. Well, you also may have done some works that affects the environment, so vegetation, flora, fauna. You might have arranged for surveys of the local ecology. That all counts. We've considered that. So sustainable development, understand the 3 pillars. I think Network Rail refer to it as people, money, business, people, business, and yeah, it's gone. But I know it in terms of social benefits, economic benefits, and environmental benefits. It's people, business, and planet. That's Network Rail, so buzzwords. So understand those and refer to those in this section that you know about the 3 pillars, and give an example where you've delivered something. It might be, as I say, a survey on the ground, it might be reuse of materials, or it might be doing some environmental assessment somewhere. And then finally, the next couple is demonstrate your commitment to personal development. So this goes through all levels, but demonstrate that you've got a personal development plan. So we would, in the Permanent Way Institution, recommend you follow our website, which has got an automatic My CPD link where you can record your personal development. There's a whole series of presentations that I've done about personal development and CPD. So, and I think I've got 1 or 2 slides in a minute about that. So you need to demonstrate you've got a development plan which can be recorded on the website, and demonstrate, let's say you've got at least a year continuous professional development, which again can be recorded can be easily on the PWI website. In fact, I've been just adding to it this morning on my record. So finally, don't ignore this. You need to give an example of how you've applied ethical principles. So it's demonstrate that you do the right thing professionally. If you can't find a specific example, so where you might have blown the whistle, for example, where someone might be acting outside of ethical principles. Say, for example, on a tender assessment, you find that your governor has decided that, oh no, we should give this job to this plant operator over here, which might just be his brother-in-law or something. So you need to, that's not a good practice. If you blow the whistle or something like that, that's a good example of you give. Or if you're involved in a tender assessment, again, another example linked to that, where you've worked strictly in accordance with fair representation and dialogue with all the bidders. That's a good example as well, how you've worked ethically. You've understood the rules and you've kept within those rules. So years ago, I was doing a tender again. I used to tell where my background was on this, and I was approached by someone I knew working for one of the bidders, and I had to report that my friend, who I knew worked for one of the bidders, to the managers to say, I'm sorry, I've been approached around the back door to talk about this job. So that's an example, good example of demonstrating how you've worked ethically, but you understand the ethical principles. So I hope that's laboured that bit, but that's really in some detail to make sure that you answer the questions on the form. Okay, so how are we doing for time? I think we're okay. So I've got a little bit more time to go on to IncEng. So for IncEng, you do need to make sure that your qualifications are accredited by the Engineering Council. I won't go into much detail here, but incorporated engineer, you need an accredited bachelor degree, and there's differences between whether it's pre-1999 or past 1999. Same for chartered engineer with master's degree. But some degrees also are not on the accredited list, but with so you might have a bespoke package of qualifications. Don't back off if you think, oh, I don't meet that. Please come to the PWI, because we have an academic panel, because you might have done some. So we have had some people with geography degrees, but it might be more balanced and biased towards geology, so that helps in terms of geotechnics, and then they've supplemented that with other modules from rail industry or engineering, and when the academic panel looks at the whole package, they might say, well, you know what, I think we'll accept this for IngEng, or maybe in many cases also accept sort of bespoke packages for CEng. Just while I mention that, another good route to get to IngEng is we have got the track engineering diploma that's now run by the Permanent Way Institution, that gives you a route to IngEng with other engineering qualifications, other qualifications that are below a degree. But with that, coupled with the track engineering diploma, PWI modules 1, 2, and 3, give you an alternative route that gets assessed by the academic panel. Okay, so to go to IngEng or CEng, you need to do a professional, everyone then has to do a professional review report, and everyone has an interview at IngEng and CEng level. So if you've got to jump through a few hoops in terms of getting your qualifications assessed, yeah, you go through that, and you've got to go through the report and the interview. I can't stress enough how you need to work with your sponsor in producing your report, and also your sponsor should be able to help you, mentor you towards your interview as well. Again, we don't want too many supporting evidence for your professional report. Quite a bit more effort than EngTech, but it is going to be incorporated engineer and then subsequently chartered engineer, so it's not unreasonable. So again, in terms of A, B, C, D, and E, although I haven't said A, B, C, D, and E here, you have to demonstrate in your report that you cover basically knowing your stuff, that you can apply. You've had plenty of application experience, that you've got technical, and this time moving to ING and CEng, you've got technical and commercial. So you need to demonstrate a bit of budget management and responsibility as you move to ING. And we talk about management for ING and leadership for CEng, and there's also quality management comes in there as well. So we're looking for continuous improvement, demonstrating and the passion in terms of managing quality and delivery also helps as you move to ING and CEng. More about demonstrating effective interpersonal skills. So demonstrate more about communication. It's fantastic if you can demonstrate stakeholder engagement, third-party liaison, coordination, systems coordination, and also working with younger engineers or less experienced engineers, mentoring, development, all really helps in this area. And finally, you've got to build on your demonstrating your professional commitment, standards, demonstrates PWI, code of conduct, engineering council code conducts, more evidence about meeting the obligations to society, particularly safety again, and sustainable development. And also more, as ever, continuing to demonstrate diverse work, knowledge of diversity, and working ethically. Okay, so for those that don't have a degree, and I won't dwell on this at this stage, there's an alternative report. There's a couple of routes now, but this is even harder. You then can top up your lack of underlying qualifications by doing a technical report, almost a thesis actually, on it's obviously a subject chosen by you, but it's not easy. You have to do a bit of a synopsis to say what your subject is, and then you have to write a technical report, demonstrate the engineering. So for example, for me, more a civil engineer, I might choose to do a report about clearances, and so I need to talk about the performance of track, subgrade, structure movement, and explain why these happen, performance of vehicles, springing, and wear on vehicles, because the interaction between vehicles and vehicle kinematics and the clearances, end throw, center throw, things like that. You'd have to do a full report demonstrating your technical knowledge. And then, having done that, you have a technical interview to demonstrate you know your stuff, because this is up, if you go to CEng, it's to demonstrate your technical knowledge is up to master's level. If you're going for ING, it's to demonstrate your technical knowledge up to degree level. And then after you've passed the technical assessment, you have to do your professional review report, as all ING, CEng applicants do, and a second interview. Okay. However, we do have a new experiential learning route, which is very new, and we have a number of people going through the pilot scheme now, about a dozen going through this. We have had some successes. So those people already demonstrate they've got the sort of at CEng, you've got a equivalent of a bachelor's degree or BSc, but they have a assessment. Excuse me. excuse me. So they had to demonstrate that gap between masters and EngEng by a questionnaire and review by scrutineers from the PWI academic panel. So you have had some successes here, and you need to set down more examples of how you've met certain criteria. And of course, demonstrating your CPD, and actually your CV is important as well in this assessment in terms of looking at EngEng, you're looking at leadership here. So it's how you team leadership, continuous improvement are issues they're looking for. But the good news on this one is you don't have an interview, but you do, after assuming you pass the scrutineer's review and acceptance by the academic panel, that you then progress to professional review interview as normal for EngEng. Okay, briefly on the professional development plan. So, as I say, you must have this, and it needs to be a living document. Personally, I review it every calendar year, and that's it. But you also can add things as you go through. So, I recently looked at there was a really good paper recorded by the PWI about clearances by Bridget Eickhoff from RSSB. Really good, by the way. I recommend you see that. But she talked about different types of gauging, and I thought, you know what? I think I need to find out a bit more about that type of gauging she talked about. So that's something I should put on my development plan to follow up that type of gauging. So what you need to do is keep it's a live document. You should look at your career, where you want to go, and you should look at short term, medium, and long term. A good thing to do is to look at your do a SWOT assessment. So look at your personal strengths, weaknesses for where you want to go. So you know, I'd say, well, I'm actually pretty good at number bashing, and I like my sons, but I'm probably a little bit weak on one-to-one engagement and talking, perhaps. So maybe I need to get a bit more training on presentations or something like that, and some experience with managing a meeting or leading a meeting. Then also look at opportunities and threats. So you might say, well, in fact, it's a great opportunity announced today by Boris Johnson, who said that there's going to be some investment in the construction industry. So one would think that there should be some opportunities in the rail industry. Whereas, I mean, HS2 is already an opportunity. I'm thinking, because I'm more a metro man from TfL, that Crossrail 2 might be an opportunity. So that hopefully would come out of that. Then you've got to look at threats as well. So the current crisis is a bit of a threat in terms of you might not get out and kick the components so much. So you just got to and safeties as a priority. You've got to get that balance right in terms of seeing the railway on the ground and actually being competent. So I haven't travelled on the train for 3 months, so my experience of railways is dwindling at the moment. So then look at hard technical needs, soft behavioural needs. So I might decide, when I see this presentation back, I might want to do better at presentation skills, but equally, as I say, I want to know more hard technical knowledge about clearances after the talk that Bridget Eickhoff did. I need to know a bit more about that. Or I might want to know about heat strengthening of steel structures, which I'm really looking forward to in the West Wales meeting next week, I think. So then look at what you've set down and produce a plan. Obviously, you look at priorities, because you can't, some of them might need a course. You might say, oh, I think I'll do that. PWI track engineering diploma gives me a route to ING, but there's time involved to attend 3 modules. There's a funding issue there, so you need to talk to your employer about that. And then you need to look at the time it takes. So it'll take a year to do the PWI TED course, so you need to look that up. Or you might say, do you know what, I think I can do a part-time course somewhere, or I'll go and look up that paper that Paul was talking about clearances, because I need to brush up on clearances. Okay, so just to finally finish now, CPD, some examples. So it's not just about attending courses or events like this. This counts, CPD, but reading, distant learning, TV documentaries. I saw one last year about Crossrail That was so it went down as an hour's CPD. It's really interesting. Courses, of course, any course you do, health and safety course with your employer or others, but it's not just about aspects of activities, but you can look at different materials and methods. So if you're first time you've been working with some composite timbers perhaps, or composite bearers, that would be an example. But when you become familiar with composite bearers, you can't constantly keep putting down that as CPD. But you know, it might be part of the day job that you've been asked to install some composite bearers and work with them. First time you do that, you're learning, that goes down as CPD. So it might be a first time you're using a software package in design, so ClearRoute or something. First time you're learning, maybe the second time you're getting a bit of experience. But once you're proficient with it, you can't put down using that software again. So as I said, health and safety, environmental. Then as you might get onto what I call softer stuff, as you get management, look at project management, contract, leadership, and presentation, etc. So other things outside, away from perhaps on the job help. So I always think a site visit is always you learn something on a site visit. Any presentations you can do, of course, and the preparation all count. Working with schools and colleges is really ticks the box, as they say. Coaching, mentoring younger or colleagues, as I've already said, really helps. And of course, as the PWI, lots of sections, I said, we've got. Now you can promote online stuff. We're really looking for ambassadors to help work with the PWI online. I've even been encouraged to use LinkedIn myself. But if you become a local ambassador, spreading the word using the social media, that will all count. That's towards your professional development. So there's the PWI Code of Conduct. Summarise. Sorry, just going back to CPD before I forget. It's not just about work. I also do some work for my local church in terms of managing the maintenance of a Grade 1 listed building. So that helps. I've done some work with our local scouts on the event. That helps. But it can go down. But as long as it's not full of scouts and church and no railway engineering, then that counts. So there we are. Summary of the PWI Code of Conduct. I won't dwell on that. I think that's it. Probably a bit longer than we'd hoped, but I hope that was useful. Should we take some questions, Liz?
Yes, thank you very much, Paul. I'm just going to stop the recording there.